Yes, Spurs fans, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur here, freshly robbed from a penalty at Newcastle, where we're going to be discussing the VAR. And it's been a while since we've had these sort of discussions, so I'm looking forward to seeing what plenty of the Spurs fans have to say about it. Probably one of the worst decisions I've ever encountered with the many of streams and many of games I've watched with Dave. That might have been one of the ones where I was just most baffled by. And of course, more and more questions about Thomas Frank, more and more questions about this squad. How good are they really? Is Thomas Frank getting the most out of them? Is he doing the very best he can? So more difficult discussions, but of course, that's usually the life of being a Tottenham Hotspur fan. Billy, how you feeling? Freshly robbed from one of the craziest decisions last night.
Yeah, man, that was horrific. I feel like a bit of a weird game because, it's a good result in all. I know we'll get into it in a bit more, but I thought we were pretty terrible, to be honest. But Romero, that son of a bitch, he got had a real night last night, didn't he? And if it wasn't for him, I don't think I think we'd be talking about whether Frank's still in a job. So yeah, really weird game. Probably the worst VAR decision I've ever seen in my time as a football fan. But yeah, good to get the draw, but my God, we need to start playing better.
Yeah, I think that exactly summarizes my feelings. It was a hard one, though, for me and Dave to really wrap our head around, to be honest, because that decision, I think, almost overshadows really a lot of the performance, a lot of the game in general. But you can't ignore the decision, in my opinion, either. Sam, how you feeling after last night's Romero heroics and also referees once again stealing the show?
When Bergvall had that sort of scoop turn, like back heel shot,
Yeah.
and then he had another one like quite close after that. I was like, oh, I never bet, and I don't promote gambling, but I never put bets on, but I have a Bet365 account. And I was like, you know what? I've got a feeling Bergvall's going to score. So I went to put a bet on Bergvall to score. And I thought about it for a little bit. And by the time I actually put the bet on, I was like, you know, I don't think Bergvall is going to score. But I think that the way that the game was going at that point, it was like 35 minutes into the game. And I was like, I just feel like we're going to score first. We've been so crap. But it's just got the feel that like we're going to nick one here and we're going to end up winning it. So I put on like a bet builder, which ended up not coming in, unfortunately. But I did get that there was going to be more than 2.5 goals. But I was quite positive going into half time. As much as the game had been terrible, I didn't really like. They had that Joe Ellington chance, and other than that, I can't really remember any like serious chances they had where I was like, "Oh my god, like we're in serious trouble here." Not that that excuses how bad we were playing in general.
Yeah,
but going into the second half, I thought like, okay, we can build on that. And to be honest, I thought we did, and then they scored against the run of play.
Yeah,
and obviously we managed to score, and then they get that penalty again. I think against the run of play, how the game was shaping up. And I just wanted to rebuttal Billy's point about being the worst VAR decision you've ever seen, because I remember, and I'm sure you probably know what I'm thinking of. I remember being sat in the home stadium. We're in the last like 2 minutes of the game against Newcastle. And someone, I can't remember who it was, like Andy Carroll, like pushes Eric Dyer in the back, who like throws his arms like that.
The early days of VAR, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. The ball hits him in the arm. But just typically, the two worst decisions I've ever seen have been against Newcastle.
That was horrific as well.
Yeah. No, I agree with a lot of your sentiments there, Sam, where there was something about that game that made me feel like even though we were kind of the worst team for large periods, just something about it kind of gave me the feeling I think we might actually get something from this. Probably was because Joe Ellington in almost any other game, normally that goes in the back of the net. He seems to put on his best ever performances against Spurs. And the fact that he did hit the post almost gave me the feeling that maybe we might be riding some luck tonight. James, how you feeling after VAR controversy, Romero heroics?
Yeah, not too bad. I feel quite numb to it, you know, guys. I was on a podcast earlier this week. I was just a bit numb to it. So the fact we actually got a point, I predicted 4-1 Newcastle. So I was quite pleasantly surprised that we somehow got a draw. And I know people are saying we got robbed, but I mean, yeah, technically we should have won 2-1 on, you know, if that VAR decision wasn't a thing. But Sam's talking about gambling. At the moment, I wouldn't bet on us to have more than 2 shots on target a game. So that's probably one to maybe go under on if you can do that.
But, seriously. Yeah.
But no, it's just another bore fest, really. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, a lot happened in the game. It wasn't actually a boring game, but just I'm feeling numb, lads. I'm sure a lot of people in the chat know what I mean. Like, I just feel so numb. I'm debating whether to even go Saturday. I've been offered a free ticket. I mean, you can't even give out tickets at the moment, let alone sell them. So it's just a bit of a dire time, but I'm sure we'll come through it.
Yeah. It's sometimes a bit of a pain to be watching Spurs, but it's what we do it, just for the moments like last night for Romero heroics. And also Dave knows this. I'm kind of one of those. I do get a nice little smile on my face whenever you feel like you maybe robbed someone, of a point, little highlight robbery over up in Newcastle. Good to see so many people in the house. While you can, as you're coming in, please smash the like button. If you're watching over on X, thanks to Billy, who's pushing us out there as well. Feel free to follow us over to YouTube. If you want to become a channel member and ask your questions for after the show, feel free to do so as well. It does help us out a ton. And if you want to do what Paul Markey has done and come in the show, give us your opinions about anything that might have happened from last night or in general on the conversations that we will be having, it does really help support the channel. Paul Markey came in here nice and early, Dave, saying switched on to watch the second half and was actually delighted with the performance and the point. Was I right about that waste of space? I think he's talking about the one and only Brennan Johnson. Sarr was also poor.
Look, at the end of the day, I think many people are sort of fearing the worst heading into that Newcastle game, given some of the spankings we've took up there in recent years. And I think, many of us would have snatched their hand off if you offered us a point before the game. So in hindsight, you got to be happy with that. And look, the second half performance maybe a tad better than the first half performance in terms of actually trying to show a little bit of intent, maybe. But the first half in games are still becoming a huge problem. That's 4 games in a row now. We haven't had a shot on goal or on target in 4 first halves now. That can't keep continuing. Despite the positivity of the result last night and the draw, it's still only 3 wins in our last 14 games in all competitions. So like I'll take the positives from it, and hopefully we can double down and beat Brentford, then at the weekend, and then all of a sudden we're back in the top half of the table, and I think everything quietens down, and then Frank buys himself that bit of time towards the January transfer window. But if we don't back it up against Brentford at the weekend, then all of a sudden that positivity, that we've generated off the back of that Newcastle away performance, then all of a sudden dissipates. So look, I can understand people maybe being happy with that point away from home. And at the end of the day, this is one thing I do think where Thomas Frank does deserve a bit of credit is he's got it nailed on away from home. We do pick up, points and results away from home. It's the home form which is atrocious, and that all leads to because he doesn't know how to play an on the front foot game, and that leads to a lot of our problems at home. But away from home, the way we actually play actually suits us to a large degree. Look, when it comes to Brennan Johnson, he actually nearly opened the scoring for us, which I couldn't believe. Got on the ball, sprinted with it, put in that cross. Unlucky. But after that, a lot of what he done actually just really pissed me off and stuff. There was one moment there we put a ball to the back post and you're thinking, oh, Johnson's time. Guy wasn't even in the box. And I'm looking at him like, but that's the whole reason why you're in the team. So, what? Not a great night for Brennan Johnson in that regard. But look, we'll take the point, Paul Mark, and we move on to the weekend.
Just one thing I'll quickly add, maybe just to satisfy Paul Markey on, his, let's say disdain for Johnson at times. The guy hadn't played in recent games, right? He's not really been given a ton of minutes. So you think he would have had a lot of energy to be able to be running up and down, to be able to be at the back post. And there was one occasion where Dave and we had that transition or that counterattack. And we saw Johnson just doing that typical 2 hands jog thing, with the hands close to his chest, when he could have easily been making a run in behind to help support whoever it was on the left flank that had the ball. I think it was Destiny Udogie, who was just asking for someone to make a run so that he could play them in behind. And he was just sagging behind. Plenty of times, Sam knows this. It's probably one of my more delusional takes, which is really something to say. But I do sometimes really question this guy's fitness, Johnson. I feel like I probably would be able to beat him in that pre-summer Thomas Frank beep test or whatever that is that he's done in the early summer training. I really do question this guy's fitness at times. But thank you, Paul Markey. Thank you to so many people joining us. I'm seeing Tartan Spurs. I'm seeing Dan Coys as well. Big up to you, Danny Boy, saying good result for us. Still no game plan or structure. Agree with the subs that you both said yesterday. Always too late from Thomas Frank. Maybe that's something we should have probably brought up maybe in one of the questions, but we could save it for the Irish lads tomorrow. PH family saying big up, guys. Been a hard watch this season, but I'm willing to give the manager some time. Can't beat another sack and higher merry-go-round. That's a fair point. I think a lot of people are in that boat. Iceman's in here. Ricky saying big up Dave and Jack and the rest of the panel. Also everyone in chat. If that was a penalty, then 2/3 of then there should be 2 to 3 penalties nearly every game. I think we were having the same reaction. Stevie Frazier saying I agree with Big Sam here. Always agreeing. Ractos
He
Madness.
meant Sam Allardyce, by the way.
Alan saying happy Wednesday, Dave and Jack. been swamped at work, but I'm happy with finally catching an Irish Hotspur stream. Great to see you both. Hopefully everything's all right, Alan. Hopefully it's good, kind of busy for you, and really appreciate the support that you've been showing us for a few years now. You've been very, very kind to us, of course. Too darn so full. Mark New, Nicholas is in here. The chat's absolutely fine. So I'm going to catch up here to Daniel Field, George Harris, and then Chris Peter saying 3 big decisions have hurt us. Last night's pen, the Arsenal players, 2 players offside, and no VAR when Sarr got fouled on the edge of the box, and the opposition scored. I think I'm more kind of, to be honest, James, like I feel like I know Sam brought up a good occasion of the VAR controversy with Andy Carroll. More times with Spurs, I feel like there have been times when we're the ones who are fouled in the box, or we're the ones that look like maybe we should be having a look from the VAR, and it's not even given more than one replay, let alone a VAR check. So to have this happen, I wasn't that surprised, but I do, maybe this is the most delusional thing to say, but I do feel like it is crazy. I feel like how few decisions we get that Newcastle got, if you get what I'm saying. We don't get these bogus decisions. Feels like it's always the other team that does.
Yeah, yes
that
and no.
Last night, Jack.
Go on, Sam.
Sorry. Did you ask him directly? Sorry,
both of you can come in. Both of you, free for all.
I was just going to ask you. Jack. Like to the last thing that you said. Like, if that was the other way around and it was Dan Burn on Bentancur last night, would we have got that pen? I don't think so.
No. And Dave and I, to be fair, Dave and I would absolutely be laughing it off, saying like, I don't know how we've been given that one. I think Dave and I have been fair in past times, but I can't remember a time when I've done a stream with Dave where we've been given a bogus decision like that, to be honest, and we've been the recipients of. It always feels like, we have to. I mean, Madison got decapitated that one game against Eintracht Frankfurt, and it took like 5 minutes for them to even take a look at it, if you ask me. So I agree with you, Sam. Totally agree with you.
All I was going to say was, like, I do agree with that. I feel like we do get the rough end of the stick, or whatever the saying is. I've completely forgotten what the saying is. But, like, I also think that as football fans, we have a slight bias, whether we admit it or not, that, the refs are always against us. And I try and take a neutral view. And there are probably times where we get decisions and we don't really talk about it because we've got the decision. Do you see what I mean? So it's like, I do agree. I do think we do get, the worst share of it in the Premier League. I'd like to see a table, because I think there's tables where it's like points versus like VAR mistakes kind of thing. And I know Liverpool used to be up the top of there and getting points where they shouldn't kind of thing. I'd be interested to see if there was some kind of insight as to where we would sit on that kind of table or scope.
Yeah. Anything to add to what else, the other occasions that Chris has brought up here, Billy, with the Arsenal players offside and the no VAR with Sarr?
I just remember the beginning of the season in particular, felt like we had a horrendous referee in every single game. And it's kind of felt like that all season, really. I just feel like, and I think it's like a cultural thing, to be honest. I don't feel like we make a big deal of it as a club. Like, I hate to bring up Arsenal, but if that had happened to them last night, there would be a mass protest going on outside PGMOL right now from their fans and their manager. We're just a bit too nice to people. We don't really, like, Thomas Frank's not really going to complain that much about it, is he? And I think in these kind of things, you have to make it such a big deal that it gets into the referee's mind in the next game, like Liverpool and Arsenal do. But we're just a bit too nice about the whole thing, I think.
Bill, do you feel like that was reflected on our manager itself? Because, like, if we had Mourinho or Conte, right, that would be getting brought up like all the time. Like, if a mistake happened, Mourinho would be absolute comical about it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, Frank, that's just I'm not going to use it as a criticism of Frank. It's just that that's just not his personality, is it? He's never going to be that guy that's going to go like do an Arteta and absolutely stink up the interview talking about PGMOL the whole time. Because he's quite a nice, he's a very nice rounded character, isn't he? He's not that kind of thing. But I mean, we have Nottingham Forest releasing statements, don't we? And they hired Clattenburg to look into it. And all these things, you can say that they don't make a difference, but they must make some slight bit of difference in the back of a referee's mind at some point. Whereas against Tottenham, you just know, it's just moved on to the next one. You never get anything. Like Ange spoke about it a lot when he was manager as well. Like, no one really sticks up for Tottenham in the media. So, yeah, I feel like we're a club, we're just always on the wrong end of it, and we never really keep up much of a fuss to make a difference about it.
That's where a big problem lies for me. And that's, because, to be honest, I don't even think it's a Thomas Frank issue, manager specific. I don't really remember any managers at Tottenham really going mad about any decisions. I don't remember any of the club ever releasing a statement about being on the wrong end of real controversial decisions. And I think that's a cultural thing within inside the club, that they just want to try and keep the PGMOL and the referees happy. And they probably see, we'll keep them happy and we'll get the benefit of decisions. But actually what you're seeing is clubs that are coming out in various different ways, putting pressure on these referees, are the clubs that tend to get a lot, the lion's share of decisions and stuff like that. And, to your point, it must have an effect. Of course it does, because then all of a sudden, when these guys in the VAR room with a referee, straight away they're thinking from, say, when Jurgen Klopp used to at Liverpool, straight away they're thinking at it from a Liverpool perspective, because they know the pressure that's being put on them. So subconsciously, when they're looking at decisions, they know when it comes to, say, Liverpool, Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, they have to get it right. And 9 times out of 10, if it's 50-50, they're going to give it to them because of the pressure that's being put on them. But that's my whole problem with VAR in the first place. It was brought in to sort of try and improve the game. We were told we needed to improve the game. It's getting a lot more wrong than what it's getting right recently, in my opinion. There's no consistency with it from weekend to weekend, from game to game. None of the fans are enjoying it, the ones inside the stadium or anyone sitting at home. None of the coaches want it. None of the players want it. None of the managers want it. It's the big, why are we continuing with something and trying to make it work when it just doesn't work? It's killing the passion inside the ground. Fans aren't celebrating goals anymore now because they're waiting for VAR checks, because they don't want to look silly and stuff like that. I'd argue it's also making the refereeing decisions, your refereeing standards a hell of a lot worse as well, because they're not there making big calls anymore. They're weak now in their decision making on the football pitch, because they're going to let VAR step in and let VAR take the responsibility for it, so that they're not the ones that are in the headlines and stuff like that. And for me, I just think it's just not working in football at all, in my opinion. And I want it gone. I think it's absolutely ruined the game. It's even taken the physicality out of the game anymore, to the point, because, sometimes some of the stuff we're seeing slowed down. When that's actually happening at that speed, it's not as bad, or it doesn't hurt as much as it looks like when you slow it down and stuff like that. And it's absolutely killing the whole game, the whole spectacle. And no one in football wants it. It's getting to the point now, like the old saying used to be, a good referee is someone you barely notice. Now all we talk about every weekend, coming off the back of games, VAR decisions, referee calls, so much to the point now they're becoming celebrities. They get their own show on Sky Sports. They're getting their own time dedicated to them and everything else. I've never seen anything like it. And to the point now, football's become saturated. I'd argue it also leads to a sterile game of set pieces and all, because you can't make challenges and all that bollocks anymore. I'm fed up with the whole fucking thing. Get rid of it. And to be honest with you, it's having that much of a decisive effect on games. It's literally dictating the outcome of games. I'm telling you now, in years down the line, there will be a match fixing scandal off the back of this. I'm telling you.
I think what's also crazy is to hear old pundits who played during the much more physical era somehow have become so corrupted with all of this that they're even justifying the decision for a penalty. It's like in their day, that would never on earth be considered as a penalty decision whatsoever. It's amazing that they're even trying to rationalize decisions like this. Or maybe it's just because they happen to hate Spurs. I'm not too sure what it is. PH family saying the only time we got a bogus decision was against Liverpool that one time, and we almost brought down the entire Premier League when we've done it. Great comment from PH family. Good to see Shemtan as well. Tom THFC. AK Shegs has gone as far as to say that was the worst decision in the history of VAR. I don't know about that, but it was one of the worst ones I've seen in a while. I'll definitely admit to that. AK Shegs. And then Chris Peters is going over to the Slavia Prague game. Very nice to see. And then Dermatron came in here, and then we will touch a little bit more on it and we'll move on to some other questions. But Dermatron has come in and saying, big up, guys. I may not like the manager, but I'll always back the team. You can have your Uniteds, you can have your Cities, your Rovers, but there's only one Tottenham Hotspur. Come on, you. Flat Cap Army, come on, you effing Spurs. Big up to you, Dermatron. Really appreciate the support. Hopefully you're doing okay after being robbed last night, and maybe some Romero heroics have lightened the spirits for you, my friend. But we're just going to touch very briefly again, since I think we've already been kind of talking about the VAR, but we did have a good question on it here from Dave. And we saw another, of course, controversial decision last night. Sometimes it gets ignored every week, with the Premier League already struggling for consistency. Where do you stand on VAR's role right now, Billy? Is the problem the technology, the referees, or the way the rules are just being applied?
I don't think it's the technology, to be honest with you. I think it's the way that we use it. Every time I watch the World Cup, or I remember watching AFCON a few years ago, and the whole tournament was seamless. Champions League doesn't seem to be as much of an issue. It's definitely the way that we use it as a Premier League, I believe. I think even when you watch things like La Liga and stuff, I think the fact that our VAR is decided by like a group of men in a van in Hayes, where I'm from, just over the road from me right now, actually, is crazy. Also, the fact that once a referee goes to the screen, they never ever just go by their decision. They always go by whatever they're being sort of. We basically know as soon as they go into screen, they're going to change their decision. They never have the sort of confidence to back themselves. So I definitely think it's about the way that we do it. And I think, we're at a stage now where I think someone just put it in the chat as well. I think slow down. I think every foul looks horrific or worse than it actually is. And we're sort of re-refereeing the game in slow motion. And I don't think football is, when you do slow things down to slow motion, all the fouls are awful. So I don't think VAR as a thing is like horrific. I just think the way that we use it in the Premier League is terrible.
And to you, Sam, I mean, is the game gone after last night's decision? Should VAR be scrapped altogether, or is this just an instance of it being applied terribly?
I don't disagree with like quite a lot of what Dave said about VAR. I think that the distinction that is the issue, and you kind of hit the nail on the head with it, where you said that these refs are becoming celebrities in their own rights. Whereas before they were just there to see the match through. And now, as you say, they are dictating the outcomes of games almost. I think that one of the biggest issues with VAR is the legislators and the legislation. Like when you read some of the stuff they put in the clauses or whatever you'd call it for what would classify as a penalty in the box. It's so vague and it's so subjective that you can argue the point from any side. And I think that that's an issue because I know it's difficult to say like this is a Stonewall pen, that's not a Stonewall pen, but it's easy for them to hide behind the legislation and not make the decisions. And I think that a massive thing as well that you also said, Dave, is the re-refereeing of games. Because I swear we've been told over and over and over again, the role of VAR is not to re-referee games. It's to basically intervene when something is missed. But also they always say clear and obvious. It's always clear and obvious, clear and obvious. How last night was that clear and obvious? Because I've watched it probably 30 times today. And don't get me wrong, I can understand if they'd given that on the pitch, that's not getting overturned, I don't think. But he didn't. So why did he have to go to the screen to look at it and not even see the footage from where the corner taker is, so you can see when the contact begins and ends, if it's during open play or not? And I think like we're one of 6 teams or 5 teams in the league that the referee's gone to VAR, gone to the monitor, and not stuck with their gut. We're one of the only teams that's happened to. And last night, you just knew as soon as he went over to the monitor, he was going to change his mind. It's such a power trip. I feel these referees are now on. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not one of these guys that is going to just abuse referees like all the time. Obviously I don't like a lot of these referees, but I'm not online like throwing verbal abuse at them. But it's obviously frustrating when you see these games, man. Even the Arsenal game, you see that it's Michael Oliver as the ref, and you're just like, well, that's 3 points lost. You just know, and again, obviously he makes that decision with the offside, the players with the offside, and there was multiple decisions in the home North London derby last season that we were all like, how? My issue is where's the threshold for what does and doesn't get checked for like serious foul play or VAR intervention? Because I can't remember what in the Fulham game. I feel like there was something that happened that VAR didn't even check. Because there's been a few games this season where I'm like, how has that not even been checked? Definitely the Arsenal one with the offside, they didn't check it. So I don't get. I just don't get it. Look, if they got rid of it, I'd be pretty happy. But if it stayed, they just need to actually implement the correct rules and have a backbone to say, this is my decision. I saw it in real time. I don't need you to influence me to say, here's where we think the foul is. What do you think? Because I think that's the problem with it. You know, they're always telling them, this is where I think the foul is. You've made a mistake. Do you want to have a look at it again? But how are you supposed to say no? You're on mute, Dave.
That's where the problem lies right there. It was because you got two human beings, one on the pitch, one in the VR room, and they both have different interpretations of the rule. They both have different standards of what's allowed in the game and what's not and stuff. And so what's the point of it? Just leave it with the guy on the field at that point. Let him referee the game. He's on the pitch. He can feel the game around him and stuff like that. You know, it just drives me mad. Look, for me, I think it's been given a fair chance now, and I just want it scrapped. I might be a bit old school to me. And look, I get the argument that stuff like this has worked in other sports, but none of it is played at the pace of football. So,
yeah, that's fair. Or it's like, it just seems like what Billy said as well. It just seems to be just used and interpreted so much differently than maybe other leagues seem to apply it for whatever reason. We just seem to get it wrong and wrong again. We'll finish off with James. Would you do what PH Family suggested here? Just use it for only offsides? Would you actually be content with that, or would you keep VAR as it is for right now?
I kind of agree with what Sam was getting at. Like, just use it. And I think Dave said it as well. Use it less and only use it for the really, really key decisions. It's being used for absolutely everything. It's slowing the game down. 90-minute game now is taking, I'd like to know the stats, but it must be taking at least 110 minutes. Like, it's just on average, maybe like 105 or whatever it is. It's just stupid. Like, for me, yeah, definitely offsides. Implement it so you've got that 4D offsides that they have in the what do they have it in the World Cup, and they use it in other leagues as well. Like, why are we doing the draw the lines thing? That's just ridiculous. And when they do the draw the lines bit, they do it with like the most 144p quality camera I've ever seen in my life. I mean, how are we in 2025 and we're not doing it with 4K cameras or the 4D ones? Like, it's ridiculous.
I swear the images we get at Tottenham are grainy, but everyone else is like 4 HD. You can't miss it. You know what I mean?
So yeah, so with the offsides, definitely, obviously implement it like they did. I think it was the World Cup. They did it quite well, where it's, you know, you can clearly see with the 4D sort of models. In terms of the decisions, yeah, it's just becoming ridiculous. It just, anytime you go to the screen, you know what's going to happen. The referee never actually, you know, goes with his own decision. Like Sam was saying, it's like, we're going to tell you what to do here, and that's not what it was meant for. It was meant for a bit of guidance when something goes wrong, or, you know, it's a clear and obvious error, and it's that clear and obvious error element is out the window now. So it's just ridiculous, really.
Yeah, it truly is. But I imagine we'll probably, unfortunately, be having these conversations another time around VAR. So I think we'll move on from it, you know, so we spare our brains, at least for the time being here. We're going to be talking about the patience question around Thomas Frank, but Fazzy Radfar maybe has started us off in a decent way, saying, do you think we can ever win 4-0 again this season? Dave and I have been kind of joking, especially Dave, for a little bit, that it seems like almost every game is going to be a tight one. Every game is going to be a pretty close affair. I can't see us at any stage smacking a team 4 or 5-0, really. We're just not one of those sides.
Could barely muster 4 shots, let alone 4 goals.
Yeah.
Or even 4 entries into the box, let alone 4 goals at this point. Faz Radfar, you might need to change it to like 2-1 Spurs this season, my man.
Yeah, 100%.
Even that's a stretch.
But we'll talk about the patience question around Thomas Frank here, Fazzy Radfar. Spurs showed Pochettino patience, but since his departure, the club has been very, very quick to get rid of managers when things go wrong. Many Spurs fans want us to be more patient, Sam, with Thomas Frank, but has the club itself, with the way that they've operated in the past with Jose, Conte, of course, Ange as well, have they almost, the club, conditioned us as fans to have less patience with our managers?
I think there's something in that. Personally, I don't know. I feel like in the manager regard, the fans actually do have a lot more power than we realize. And look, you know, if individual booing and boos continue in games, like the hierarchy will take notice. You know, especially if people are leaving early or they're leaving, that, you know, turning up lots of empty seats and whatever. Like, you know, they'll notice it. But I just think that I said this under Ange, like, I couldn't tell you really, like, the last time I really felt proud of the club. And I think that because of that, I've lost so much love for football in the last like 5 years. Like, I know that sounds crazy when
Hang
I'm
on,
like,
sorry. You don't know the last time you felt proud of the club?
Okay, yeah, obviously I forgot. Yeah, but
Like
before
6 months ago, mate.
But
living one day at a
it's
time
like,
here.
it's like the trophy, as I said before, like one of the best nights of my life. But for me personally, that doesn't excuse the 2 years that I'd seen leading up to that. You know, I'm so happy to get that monkey off our back of the trophy. You know, I was at the game. I cried my eyes out for like 2 hours afterwards. It was unbelievable. You know, I was there with my brothers and my dad. It's just I'm like, you know, getting goosebumps now, you know, thinking about it. But before
James
that,
had to remind you, but
no, it's true. It's true. I guess there's been so much negativity recently. I just kind of forgot that we actually won a trophy. Yeah, no, I mean, as I said about the proudness, is like since we sacked Poch, like, you know, we have moments. We became like a moments team where, you know, occasionally we might pull out, like as Faz Radvar said, a 4-0 win against like a Villa or something, right? And then the next week you go and lose to Fulham 3-0. So it's just, I don't know. It's such an up and down, like topsy-turvy environment to be in, especially when, you know, you go 500 days without signing a player. So many missed opportunities on players that you've haggled over like 5 million, or not wanting to pay the wages, or just not doing it quick enough, just making it difficult. And I think that all of this stuff just breaks down the fans' love for, or at least in my opinion, the fans' love for the club, because you just think, for fuck's sake, again, we're doing this stupid crap of haggling over 5 million for Jack Grealish, or haggling over, you know, taking ages to get the Eze deal done, allowing Arsenal to swoop in. And so for me, it's just, I don't know, the frustration is just like, you know, they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It's like being a Spurs fan, like these days, you genuinely have to be like, I think, slightly psychotic, you know?
no, it's
and maybe we've all
Stanford
got that
prison
little
experiment.
bit of that in us. Yeah. It is. It really is.
Yeah.
Before I
go ahead,
came on
James.
here, I saw, just very quickly, I saw a table of the happiest Premier League fans according to The Athletic at the moment. And guess who was bottom?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, today.
But guess who was
Spurs are bottom.
second? That did make me laugh as well. Yeah.
I think it was Wolves, right?
No, Arsenal, second again.
That's funny. That's funny. But let's go to you on this, James. I mean, have you seen this from Spurs fans, you know, asking you maybe in particular, or a friend of yours that's a Spurs fan, you have to be more patient, you know, look at what it took with Pochettino. They would bring up other managers, right? You know, they would say you have to show patience. Everyone doesn't have patience anymore. Do you agree with that? Or do you feel like it's kind of what it is nowadays? You do have to get results pretty quickly.
I'm sort of halfway house, not to cop out of the question, but I feel like Thomas Frank deserves a little bit more time, but he hasn't got a load more time. He needs to show us something where, you know, we're seeing some sort of progression, or we're seeing some sort of improvement week in, week out. At the moment, I'm not seeing much improvement, to be honest. I saw a little bit of improvement in the first half of that PSG match last week, and then the second half we sort of went back to our you know, bad habits. But then again, you know, they're the best team in Europe, one of the best teams certainly in the last 12 months. So definitely give Thomas Frank more time. Patience is important. I know that probably half the fan base are already Frank out. I could be wrong on that, but it seems like the consensus on Twitter almost wants him gone already. I feel like if we actually lost yesterday, he'd have had even more heat. So I think Christian Romero's given him a bit of a get out of jail free card a little bit. But I mean, listen, he's got a few games to sort himself out. Otherwise, let's be honest, come the turn of the year, we really could be talking about, you know, another managerial sacking. And I hate to think how many it is in the last sort of 10, 15 years now. It's got to be one of the highest turnovers in Premier League history, right?
Yeah, no, it does feel that way. I mean, Billy, have you been told to be more patient around Thomas Frank? Do you think it's fair to ask that question?
Yeah, I think it's something which gets leveled at all kinds of football fans a lot, patience and stuff. And my general read on it is I think fans are happy to be patient if they can see things are trying things and things there's like green shoots of things that are trying to work. At the moment, I can't see that at all with Thomas Frank. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm out of patience, to be honest with you. I feel like Tottenham in particular are a fan base that are constantly told, it's the next project, another project, be patient. It's the new stadium. We're going into a new stadium. We have a new manager. We're going to get rid of that manager, be a next patient, the next transfer window. We've been told that on and off for the past, 20 plus years under ENIC, really. We've only really had a handful of projects which have actually worked out and got anything fruitful. And I think Tottenham fans would be happy to be patient if they were seeing things on the pitch which are worth being patient for. At the moment, I'm not seeing it with Thomas Frank whatsoever. I think the style of football is verging on terrible. I think there's no kind of there's no identity at the moment. There's no kind of clear build-up. There's no attacking play whatsoever. I think players have been shunted in and out of the team without being able to pick up any kind of formal relationship. So at the moment, at this moment in time, I'm out of patience for Thomas Frank. And I think fans are well within their rights, especially at Tottenham. So, we've been told to be patient year after year after year after year. When's it going to come for us? So yeah, it's definitely something which I hear a lot, but I'll be honest with you, my patience is out with Thomas Frank already.
Are you Frank out, Bill?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I wouldn't say I'm as strong as that. I think if he loses to Brentford, I would happily get rid of him. I wouldn't say I'm Frank out. I just don't think it's going to work. I do not think this is going to work. I don't think he's got the personality. I don't think he's going to turn this around. I don't think he's going to be here by the end of the season. I'm not Frank out per se. I just don't think he's got it.
Okay.
Do you think the club have conditioned us, though, to be less patient, just quickly, Billy, because they've sacked so many managers so quickly before?
Definitely in the past. Yeah, definitely in the past. And it's a tricky one, right? Because, you have to give managers time. Like, that's obvious. Like, no manager really is going to come in. Like, Arne Slot was an exception rather than a rule. And there's huge amounts of context behind that with him taking over Klopp. But you're not going to come in and win the league in your first season, then go rosy from there. And we're already seeing in the second season, Slot's struggling. So managers do need time for sure. But at the same time, do you want to give that time to a manager who's clearly not a right fit for the club?
Yeah. I'm going to sound like Dave's therapist here, maybe his Spurs therapist. Dave, what do you make when someone tells you, another Spurs fan, you need to be more patient in general, and maybe in particular with Thomas Frank? How does that make you feel?
No, look, I understand the cause for patience behind the manager, and I've often said it myself, when it came to defending Jose and Conte, that, and I've said it myself under, loads of times, that we can't keep sacking managers and operating like Chelsea, where we're sacking managers every 2 years, because we're not funding it the way Chelsea used to do. At some point, when you look at, teams that have picked up trophies over the last few years, how long has Guardiola been at City despite them giving him money? How long has he been there? Klopp at Liverpool, how long was he there before they eventually went on the Premier League and they built on it? You look at Arteta and the time he's been given at Arsenal. So I can fully actually understand the cause for patience. However, I just think the cause for patience is behind the wrong guy, in my opinion. Look, everyone knows my opinion from the very beginning. I sort of flagged up a lot of questions about the style of play, stuff that people are very unhappy with now. And at the time, it was very unpopular. But look, when it comes to Thomas Frank, I like him. He's a nice guy. And I think he will do well at a smaller club where he can help them punch above their weight. But I just think at Tottenham, I just think the job is too big for him, and I question why Chelsea didn't hire him, why Man United turned away from him, given the demise that they've been in and stuff like that. And for me, I just think about it. It's just some of the stuff he says in press conferences about lowering our standards, about only expecting 10 good games out of 60 and stuff like that. And I mean, our club motto is to dare is to do. And this guy's telling us to lower our standards and stuff. He just doesn't fit the club in that regard. We know what we are as Tottenham fans. We're not a top of the table tree. We're not a top of the where we're fighting for Premier Leagues all the time. We're also not this bad either in terms of the way we look. We're a team that, on a given year, we can make a run of it and keep Spurs fans happy. That's the way we've always sort of been. But we've always done it by giving things a go. With Thomas Frank, he's just too reactionary. For instance, that game against Newcastle last night was there to be won in the second half. He left it way too long to make substitutions. There's 6 of them having an inquest on what ones to make and stuff like that. Then the amount of times they have to get instructions. By that time, Eddie Howe had made his 2 substitutions, came on, went 1-0 up. And that's a proactive manager. You know, with Thomas Frank, even the way he sets teams up, it's way too reactionary. You know, not getting shots on target inside the first half, 4 games running, 3 wins in our last 14 games. A lot of our attacking stats are relegation form. You know, 2 international breaks, everyone was saying, give it time. We're sitting in 4th. What are people moaning about? We're now sitting down in the bottom half of the Premier League table, and another couple of losses, and we've got Liverpool, Palace, Forest, and Brentford twice coming up, and they're our next sort of 5 league games. You don't win any of them, we're down in relegation. We're scrapping relegation. And for me, it's just, you know, everyone says give him time. Look at Pochettino. Pochettino had the bollocks to go, okay, I had to buy our own players like that. Out you go. Bentaleb, players like that, come on up. He earned his time because he had the balls to be proactive, to dare us to do. Thomas Frank, I don't think is going to do that at Tottenham Hotspur. And I'm not being funny, but one of our biggest woes is going forward. The 2 top scorers, you know, that everyone says is a part of the problem going forward, Brennan Johnson and Richarlison. But the new signings that we've given him, he's done nothing to try and alleviate the problem. The club clearly knew there was a problem going forward. And that's why they gave him 3 players to work with. One of them, he hasn't started in the last 4 games. You know what I mean? And it's just like, for me, there's just too many. I've been here before under Nuno. There's just too many warning signs of style of play and stuff like that. And Spurs fans just will not get behind. It's just not the club we are, the club we fell in love with. And a lot of the reason why we supported this club. We know what we are. We never have amazing quality. But one thing we've always done is give it a fair go and punch above our weight and try and entertain. And Thomas Frank just is not the guy to do that, in my opinion. He won't change his ways.
Yeah. Let's maybe talk about something else that is somewhat related around whether you should be giving patience to Thomas Frank or not. There's been debates all week, Billy, about, and for a while, really, whether this squad is even good enough for top 6 style ambitions. Where do you stand on this debate? Is this a quality issue, or should Frank be extracting more from these players? Granted that was probably the reason he was hired, actually, was to show that this team is better than 17th.
I think you certainly have to. You can't ignore the fact that 3 of our best players are injured: Solanke, Kulusevski, and Manton, and have been all season. And I think if we had those 3 fit, our season would definitely be looking slightly different right now. You have to do that. But I've seen a lot of people say, like, this is online. Sort of, this is where the players are at the moment. You know, this is the level of the players. You know, and I think I couldn't be further disagree than that, to be honest. I think, you know, there's plenty in there. There's plenty in there. And the fact that we're losing at home to Fulham and being played off the park at home to Fulham, you know, the fact that we're 12th in the league is unacceptable. And I can't really name any players that Thomas Frank has improved. I haven't seen any player improvement. We were told that he was a coach, a player developer. I haven't seen any development. I haven't seen a system yet. I haven't seen even sort of, I think the biggest thing for Thomas Frank is there's no clear indication that he even knows his best 11 at the moment. And while it's okay to rotate for Champions League, we're rotating every single game without fail. And like, there's no system, there's no relationship being built up, and players are sort of having a good couple of games, then being sacked off for 4 games, coming in and out. Sarr, brilliant at the beginning of the season, in and out the team. Archie Gray in and out the team. Xavi in and out the team. Brennan Johnson abandoned for 4 games and suddenly gets a left wing start last night. There's no consistency in anything. So, and I don't think these players are anywhere near as bad as they're being made to look at the moment. I certainly don't think they are as bad as our home form suggests. And I think, you know, there's plenty of talent there, like Kolo Muani, Xavi, Kudus. These are all players that we signed in summer that are on over £100,000 a week. Palhinha the same. That's £400,000 a week signings. Like, very rarely under Enoch have we ever had a window like that. You know, if you look at the players, like there's just, you know, Bergvall, Archie Gray, Tell, Odegaard, some talented youngsters. The back 4, people say, you know, we've always had all last season, all this season, when the back 4 are playing together, we're a different team. You know, Van de Ven, Romero, 2 of the best defenders in the league. Porro, Udogi, 2 really good fullbacks. So I don't think they're looking anywhere near as good as they should be right now. And I put that down to Thomas Frank, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Can I just add as well? What I'm not prepared to do, though, is anybody but Frank. I think we sort of done that with Ange Postecoglou, and look where we are right now. And I'm not prepared to do anybody but Frank. Like, if the right guy isn't lined up, that most people believe can genuinely take this club forward, then you don't pull the trigger. No, the last thing anyone wants is an interim manager, and when you get that, you don't know how long he's going to be in charge for.
We don't even have Ryan Mason in the wings anymore.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
struggling at West Brom. He started well. Now he's struggling. He's lining up.
Exactly. So what we can't do is anybody but Frank. It's got to be for the right guy, and if the right guy is available, then you make that decision and you make that choice and you go with it. But we can't just do it off a whim and not have the right guy lined up to replace him.
Big up to Queen Ellie. Good to see you in the house. Good to see King Hoddle as well. Really appreciate your guys' support. Tyler saying our squad is crap, but Frank should be getting more out of them for sure. And he's saying totally agree with Dave there. Sam, you've seen this question debated plenty of times, I imagine. Where do you stand on this idea that some people are saying, oh, it's not even top 10 quality, this team, but you kind of feel like Thomas Frank was hired to make it look like that he can get more out of these players. He did that at Brentford. Why can't he do that at Spurs?
Yeah, look, it would be wrong for me to not criticize him for that, because I criticized Ange for it. I still personally think that the squad will be good enough. Look, we're missing. I don't know, good enough for what is the question, but good enough to not finish 17th. But the question is, like, what happens when the players come back? I know you can say, oh, well, he might not even have time for the players to come back, which is true. The way that the fan base. I've been reading a lot of the comments coming in, and there's so many Frank out comments, which I'm very, very, very surprised about because of how long everyone gave Ange.
But was it Sam? Sam, just on how long everyone gave Ange, I think there was a certain section of maybe Postecoglou fans that were willing to give him any amount of time. But realistically, I think the only reason why he actually stayed in the job for as long as he could is because if you're a manager, why would you come and sign on the dotted line at Tottenham with all the injuries you have, and stuff like that, knowing that you're not really going to be able to improve the situation? And that's why I actually think Ange lasted to the Europa League final rather than fans actually giving him the chance. Because to be fair, people say that, but how many fans were at Ange walking down the tunnel, calling them this, calling them that, to the point where the likes of Matisse Tell had to go and speak to fans and stuff? So, I get what you're saying, but I think it's misinterpreted, where it was actually only really the sort of Ange sexuals rather than the entire fan base.
I don't think that's true, though. Like, he had the entirety of the first year. There was a small section of fans that were
we
like,
finished
"Get
fifth
this
the first
clown
year."
going." I know, but we're 14 games in, and I've been hearing Frank out for 5. I'm not a massive Frank fan, right? But the narrative last year and the year before was, I just really need to get behind the manager. I can't do the manager merry-go-round again. I'm willing to back him. And I understand that maybe a lot of those people, because they were backing Ange, they feel let down that he was sacked, and maybe that's why there's that mentality of like anyone but Frank, because Frank is the villain for replacing Ange, right? And I get it. Everyone's got their preferences. Personally, I think it was Billy mentioning about Frank's comments in he's putting us down or whatever. I can't remember exactly what the quotes were, but not that it's the same, but I couldn't stand Ange's press conferences. I thought he was stubborn. He was rude at times. The amount of times that there were things with the fans, he allowed everything to get under his skin. I don't want to just turn this into an Ange hate along, because, as I said, like, he gave me my best moment as a Spurs fan. Like, as much as I don't like the guy as a manager, and I'm happy that he's gone, like, he'll forever be in my heart for getting us over that line. And no one can take that away from him, and I'll clap him until the cows come home. But I just don't understand. Like, I'm seeing all of these Twitter tacticos like telling us exactly what's wrong with that's not including you, Billy, because you're in this weird little bubble. I feel.
I don't know if Billy's in the Twitter Tactica sphere. Maybe not yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of people I'm seeing that are telling us what they think is exactly what's wrong with Frank and why he's doing all this stuff wrong. And I just feel like everyone's got their opinions. So when it's not going exactly how they play it, they're like, well, I wouldn't have done that. So getting gone. And I know that's not everyone, right? I'm not trying to rope everyone in and tarnish them with the same brush. But I think my overarching point before I concede to someone else is we're supposed to be everyone, like all the Spurs fans claim that we're a patient fan base in terms of like, we've had to watch Dross for 25 years. We've won 3 trophies in that time or whatever. And so we are patient. But when it comes to managers and it comes to players, especially young players, it seems like they have one moment and they're the best player in the world. And then the next week they miss sitter and it's like, get him gone. I've seen people, after the Fulham game, I saw a bunch of people on Twitter saying that Kevin Danso is the biggest problem at Spurs, and he's absolutely crap. We need to get gone straight away. I was like, the guy's a backup centre back, and you could probably like use less than the fingers you have on your hand to count the amount of bad games he's had. Has he been unbelievable? No, but he's been a very capable backup defender in my opinion. But yeah, I've been talking for a minute, so.
I mean, to be fair, the other argument was made then the opposite, where it was to defend Frank, where people were saying like, oh, like he still has Ben Davis, he has Brendan Johnson. And as much as I love, as you know, Sam, throwing those guys under the mud, he's barely even played these guys this season. So I don't really know how that's actually much of an excuse to be defending him. So I've seen it kind of both ways, maybe. But James,
Sorry, just quickly. I actually think Stan raises a fair point in terms of, everyone analyzes on what they would do when things are going wrong. And I think he raises a fair point on that regard. But even if you analyze it on what Frank is good at, we're not keeping clean sheets. We've conceded 13 goals in our last 3 games, but we haven't kept clean sheets in a long time. And that sort of is why we're not getting anything out against, because he also doesn't know how to play in terms of an attacking game going forward. And I just think, even if you were to analyze Frank on what he's good at, it's failing.
James, should he be getting more out of this squad? That's kind of the age-old debate right now.
I think he should be getting more out of them. But I don't think the squad is like, we were talking about top 6, top 8 at the start of the year. I really don't think the squad is good enough for top 6 personally. I think there's 6 better teams than us. And I think it comes down to the squad. We've talked a lot about the team, and of course we have a pretty decent 11. Some players obviously have their stinkers week in, week out, and a lot of that is tactically, putting the team out wrong, formations and decisions in games, but also the squad. And the way I take what Dave said about, making substitutions, and I agree, he makes them too late in a lot of games. A prime example was against Aston Villa. I was at that game. It was so frustrating. They were there for the taking, and we made our substitutions so late. The substitutes were waiting on the side of the pitch for about 10 minutes. And I'm not even joking when I say this. Villa then scored, made their subs earlier. Villa scored, and then we just never looked like scoring. And that's A, problem tactically, but B, a problem with the decision to put them on too late. And C, the quality of what is coming off the bench, for me, isn't what it should be. I look at sometimes our bench and I'm thinking, I don't know who the 3 or 4 subs are going to be here. Like, this is pretty diabolical. I don't know if you guys think that's harsh, but I just
you need 6 people to make the decision, though. Like yesterday, I think I counted 4 or 5 of them having an inquest on what players to bring on. Do you really need that amount?
Yeah.
Surely the manager is the one that makes the decision. Maybe gets a little input from the assistant. But, I think you had the set piece coach on his knee giving his thing. You had Cochran sitting back there as well. Like, it was madness.
Yeah, it was a bit. Yeah, it was like the clown show, wasn't it? But in terms of like the actual quality, I just think like I'm just looking now at that Villa game. Like we brought off the bench Colin Moani, Sarr, Johnson, Bergvall, and Richarlison. Personally, I think 2 or 3 of them aren't good enough. But then Villa brought on Watkins, Buendia, Martson, and Barkley. For me, even their squad depth is better. So I think a lot of the teams in the sort of top 6, top 8, top 9, they have better squad depth than us personally, I think. But obviously we shouldn't be like 13th, 14th, 15th. At the moment I think we're 12th. we could potentially go to 13th, 14th, 15th with a bad run. We shouldn't be that bad. And that's when you then have to question the manager and what he's getting out of this squad.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm sort of in the realm where I'm not sure if we are totally top 6 quality in terms of the squad itself, but then some people that have said that it's, near the doldrums, I also feel like is being far too generous. And Thomas Frank, at least I thought part of the remit was bringing him in because he got so much out of a lot of bang average players really at Brentford, and then was able to get a real tune out of them. Granted, Dave has brought up the point, Keith Andrews is doing the same thing. So it must be some sort of scouting model that they have, but there aren't too many Brentford players that I would have taken apart from their forward line last season, and brought into the Spurs team. So I kind of thought that was the whole thing behind getting Frank, was that he can get the most out of these players. And now that he has even better players, he surely should be able to challenge in the Premier League and also be able to challenge in the cups as well. But it's been hard to see
Is
that.
it fair to say maybe Frank does know how to get the best out of average players? Richarlison, 7 goals, club's top scorer. Brennan Johnson is in there, in there with 4. But when it comes to the good players like Mawani, Kudus and stuff, he can barely get in and out of them. Is it fair to maybe say he's good with average players, but when it comes to actually good players, he just doesn't know how to get the best out of them?
So you should start throwing on more of the average players, start sitting Kudus and start sitting Romero and, Danzo and Ben Davies, get them into the team. Maybe I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah,
But, yeah, no.
Think it's a fair thing to ask.
No, you kind of caught me off guard with that one. I never really thought about it that way, considering that Richarlison is probably having one of the better seasons of his career and has been able to stay fit thus far. We'll probably move this on to another question around just, players and sort of them understanding the tactics around Thomas Frank. Here, Billy, according to a journalist at The Sun, so I'll be asking whether you actually believe this much or not, but journalist Jack Rosser was saying growing frustration is within the Tottenham squad towards the manager Thomas Frank, as there is increasing confusion as to what roles the players are being tasked with, as plans are thrown out or even changed close to kickoff or alarmingly early during even the games. Do you believe this report that the players are struggling to understand what they're even supposed to be doing out on the pitch, and that Thomas Frank is tweaking things too much?
I'm not necessarily sure if I believe it in this case. What I do know that it's part of a playbook which is well worn for Tottenham. When this starts coming out, the days are numbered for a manager. We've seen it under almost every manager. Interestingly, from being good friends with a couple of the people that report about Tottenham and write about Tottenham and report about other Premier League teams, I know that some Premier League teams tend to leak them themselves sometimes if they're about to get rid of the manager. I know in the past Tottenham leaks negative stories about Conte before they got rid of Conte. I know that for a fact. So it does happen. I also think players are very, very prone, and we've had some particular names in the past, are very, very prone to leak this kind of stuff to journalists just because, they like a moan. They're a bit prima donnas. I think it's classless if that is true. And you go into journalists about the manager, have some dignity, have some respect. You're a player playing for a football club. I think that's a really weak move. But what I do know is that generally speaking, when this kind of story comes out, managers don't tend to last much longer than it.
Yeah. Dave, I think you're in a similar boat to Billy, right? Like, it just seems like these tend to come out when a manager is under pressure. Maybe it could be true, but it also seems like it's typical timing.
Look, if it was the Sun only, I wouldn't believe it, because to be honest with you, when I was younger, I never bought the Sun for its breaking football news. I used to buy it for page 3. So, I've never really trusted them in that regard. But and if anyone knows what page 3 is, you'll understand it. If you don't, I'm not explaining it. It's PG. But anyway, when the Telegraph brought out something similar off the back of the North London Derby game with the players going to Frank supposedly and asking them to worry more about what they're going to do to hurt the opposition rather than what they're going to do to contain the opposition, and the fact that it's now multiple, I think you're just going to see it keep ramping up the longer the games go on if we don't start getting results. So, look, I think like to Billy's point, when we heard it come out under Conte, Jose, and managers like that, it wasn't too long they lasted after that. So,
can I ask you guys the same question? Like, do you think the players are enjoying playing for Thomas Frank at the moment? I'm with no bias.
No.
Because I think the body language is starting to flip. Personally.
One of my biggest concerns was with Ange Postecoglou being so focused on what they're good at and stuff like that. I always thought it was going to be hard for the squad then to sort of just a complete change of regime where all of a sudden they're worrying about the threats of Wolves and Doncaster and, Bodo, Glimt and stuff rather than how they're actually going to hurt the opposition and stuff. And I just think, that put yourself in their situation in any job. If you go from one extreme to the other, you find it very hard to take on that message and you find it very hard to sort of adapt. And it's the exact same in a football environment, especially when you're bringing in two wildly contrasting different sort of, philosophies and styles of play and the way they manage and stuff like that. So I think there is a large element where they're really struggling to get on board with it.
I think last night in particular, the body language was people like Kudus just are starting to look really. I don't know. The body language is shifting for me. I don't know if you guys watch those stupid videos they do where they film the players coming in as well. Everyone just looked depressed. Like we've seen it so many times over the years, countless times at Tottenham. We get into this kind of cycle of players just looking like they don't care, they don't want to be there, which is sad. And I think, you're a professional footballer playing for a group of fans. You should never be looking like that. But I don't know. I think the signs are starting to be there.
I also think when you see the manager digging out the fans in frustration, the players digging out the fans in frustration, also signals that, it's probably all coming to an end. The warning signs were there when Mickey van de Ven and Spence walked off and blanked Frank. Mickey van de Ven, from every bit of content I watched that guy's involved in and his demeanor on the pitch, he doesn't look like a guy that would disrespect someone like that, just willy-nilly. With Spence, with some of the stuff that's gone on with him.
Yeah, a bit of a mixed bag there.
Yeah, you wouldn't read too much into it, but someone like Mickey van de Ven doesn't look like the guy that shows people disrespect too often.
Yeah, and especially in that type of manner too, where his was kind of more obvious than maybe Spence's in terms of blowing off the manager. I agree there. Anyone want to answer Billy's question there, Sam or James, just on the player's body language at the minute? James?
Sorry, I went for like 2 minutes. What was the question?
Billy, I mean, you were asking, right? Like the players just seem to look.
Yeah, do you think it looks like the players are enjoying playing at the moment, or I think the body language might have turned, right?
Yeah, definitely think it's a case of they feel like they're just like almost turning up at the moment. Like they're not putting in 100%. We saw that in the Arsenal game. That one was a sickener. So was the Chelsea game. The absolute effort levels that they're putting in is just not there. And that's what annoys me, like in general, like, to lose a game, I can take a loss, but to not try and not give 100% is completely inexcusable for these players. Some of them over on, 150 grand a week. It's just unacceptable, isn't it?
Sam, do you think the players look depressed, when the way they've been playing on the pitch?
Yeah, I do. But then, as much as I do think it's down to how boring the style of play is, but you could also probably argue there's a very clear rift now between the players and the fans. And, there's a lot of negativity, there's a large cloud of negativity at the moment. I just feel like Tottenham in general is like, hanging under this dark cloud right now. And it needs some results to go our way to think about turning it around. I mean, this kind of stuff comes out literally every year as Spurs fans. We're probably like 2 more losses away from reading that they don't like his training methods. It happens. It's the same thing every time. It's like copy and paste. It's just different journalists that you've never heard of before that post about it. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it isn't great, and I think the body language of everyone is not good. As you know, we're all football fans are body language experts. But yeah, I mean, look, they need some positivity. Hopefully that they can kind of rally together, even if they're not with Frank, rally together, get some positives, and then, build on their own stuff if you want, in spite of Frank,
Ian Ferguson saying it's getting colder, the sun's going down sooner, it's getting darker earlier, and the football has gone from shackles off to shackles on, really. So maybe that's part of the body language at the minute from these players. Maybe I'll ask you as well, though, Sam, just on part of the question about just these rumors that are coming out from journalists saying that the players don't even know what they're doing out on the pitch. Thomas Frank is tweaking things too much. Do you buy into that, or is that just, journalists often pouncing on, right, a manager and the team struggling?
I don't necessarily not believe it. There's always like a slight truth to these things, but is it a case of it's like 2 or 3 players that are feeling that way, or is it the entire squad? You know, because if it's the entire squad, then obviously there is a problem. But I can't remember who it was. Someone was talking about, I think it was someone in the group yesterday was talking about Sunderland and all of these teams that when they come up to the Premier League, they overhaul their squad massively to compete. You know, it's we basically still now we've still got a player from the Pochettino days, from before the Pochettino days. It's taken years to get rid of all those players. You know, a lot of them you would have wanted to keep forever if you could, you know, but a lot of them that should have been gone long before they were didn't.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just I don't know.
So you're saying we need to get relegated in order to clear out the squad?
No, I just think that like they need to clear out the squad basically and actually bring in serious quality. I don't think anyone's asking for us to bring in 17 new players like Forest did or whatever, but to bring in 5 serious quality players that replace a bunch of your fringe players and, you know, players like Basuma and that just shouldn't be here anymore, regardless of whether they are good or not. I think that it's all to do with the ambition, and as we've said on a lot of stuff before, I'm nowhere near behind this Lewis family ownership because it's still the same owners. They've just jumped on it on the back of the trophy win, you know, sacking Levy, the villain of the club. So we've got to see the next 2 windows. They need to make some serious signings, I think, or otherwise it's you know, as Ben Bowman was getting cooked on Twitter for people not understanding what he meant. But, you know, we could end up as one of these teams historically like an Everton who were up there fighting for trophies and suddenly, you know, they're fighting for relegation all the time. You know, Everton and ourselves and other teams that have done that should not be there. You know, we just got to have owners that match the ambition of the fans.
Yeah. I mean, James, sometimes I think you also, maybe like Billy, maybe know a few Spurs journalists or at least people in sort of the media space. Do you think they just pounce on when a manager is struggling and, you know, put these stories out?
Yeah, of course. That's part of their job. Sorry, Bill, go on.
No, you go first. Yeah.
I was just going to say, yeah, they definitely have to. That's why, you know, they get paid for clicks, don't they? You know, the more clicks they can get on their, I mean, we're sort of in a similar industry here where we clickbait titles, like they're clickbaiting their articles, aren't they? And so, you know, it happens with England a lot as well. Just before a World Cup, you know, we're starting to see controversy with Bellingham and whoever else. And give it a couple more months, there'll be another one out about another player that's then trying to cause sort of some kind of rift in the camp. It happens, and especially for the bigger clubs. So I'm not really surprised that is happening. But then again, there is probably some truth behind it. You know, I know this guy's from the Sun, but I can believe that the tactics are being changed, you know, early in games or just before the game, because they don't look like they know what they're doing. And let's be honest, like we were just saying, there is a pretty all right team. Okay, depth-wise, I'm questioning, but there should be 11 capable players out there to beat the likes of Fulham at home and Bournemouth maybe at home and Wolves certainly at home. And it's just not there at the moment. So it's just very disappointing and may need a change. I mean, I was just looking at our fixtures, like Dave was saying. I'm a bit worried. I know we said November was the November of death, but December's not even that much easier, especially how we're playing at the moment. So God knows what we're going to be feeling like at Christmas. I think I'll be drinking the barrels out of all the drinks at home, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm kind of there too, where it is hard to, you know, especially when the sun is going down sooner, it's getting colder. Even just the other day, someone mentioned before the Newcastle game, you know, get your 6-packs in even before the game. And I was like, geez, what am I doing? I haven't even had a beer for the game. I had to rush off to the store. I was realizing just when you're at this stage where the games are coming thick and fast and you're not very confident in your team, it is hard. Certainly it takes a strong man to be able to hold that off and not be drinking all the barrels. I agree with you there.
I might have to top myself up in May as well because Arsenal just scored, so the chance of them winning the league's just gone up again. So yeah, I might have to have a 3-week vacation in June just to get away from this country, to be honest with you. But
yeah, go off the grid is what I would say.
Just out and about,
take a football sabbatical, as they like to say.
Honestly, yeah.
I think we'll start wrapping things up here. I think we'll go to some of the members' questions. Billy, Sam, James, you're of course welcome to join us for it. But if you do have to rush off, you're certainly welcome to go. We don't need to tie you down for longer than an hour unless you do you want to take part in some of these crazy questions that we do get here?
I got to run for dinner, guys, but I'll see you
Thank you,
guys on
Billy.
the other side.
Cheers, Bill.
Thank you,
As
Billy.
always.
See you again next week.
Somehow get a home win at the weekend.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully we're talking about a win next
See you,
week.
Billy. Come on, you
Big up
Spurs.
to you, Billy. Appreciate you being on. But yeah, let's bring these on here. Going to start off with El Dante. Let me just zoom in for you guys here. El Dante saying, how can we get the best form and integrate? How can we get the best from and integrate Javi Simmons into the first team? I'll throw this one at you, James. Javi Simmons, what's going wrong?
Yeah, I think it's a weird one. I think it was Billy mentioned it. I think it was actually Dave mentioned it. The fact he hasn't started the last, 3 or 4 games is a real concern, considering he's technically our biggest signing for goodness knows how many years, certainly in the, signing of the summer. So to sort of not have the confidence in a player he's clearly given the approval for or asked the club to sign is a concern. How we can get the best from him, I mean, at the start, obviously, the first few games he was playing off the left. For me, he should never be playing off the left. I don't think he's good in the left. But then again, he hasn't been good in the 10. And I think a lot of that reason is he's not used to the players around him. And I think a lot of the reason is he's lost his mojo progressively. The more he hasn't given an assist or a goal, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he's got either. And maybe he's got one assist. I think it was against West Ham, if I'm right in saying. But other than that, the more you go on, the more desperate you become, and maybe you don't play in your natural way. So I think he's going to have to, break that, soon to get a goal or an assist. But how you integrate him is a difficult one, because let's be honest, the players around him are not doing him any favors. I'm not saying he's been good. He's been far from good. But I'm saying the players around him are not helping him out, and we're not playing to his strengths. And I think the fact that Thomas Frank has just almost sacked that off and just gone, yeah, I'm going to drop him, for me is a big, big concern. So actually, I don't really know what the answer is here. Perhaps someone can help me out, because I think it's a real, real shame, and I don't want it to be flop of the season. But at the moment, you could argue it is.
Sam, anything to contribute to the Javi Simmons and how to integrate him, or is it mostly his fault for not really being in the team?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because James made a lot of good points there about you've brought in this marquee signing. I guess the Spurs of old would have been playing him every game, not giving other players a chance. And I know we've said that, and we all agree that Frank is rotating too much, but I haven't seen anything from Javi, unfortunately, that warrants him starting. Every time he's been given a chance, I've been extremely underwhelmed with him. This isn't me writing him off. I'm just saying at the moment, other players are playing better. It's just the issue is that he's supposed to be our creative player. So you're noticing it more, especially when 4 games in a row, you're having no shots on target in the first half. But people have been calling for Sarr to play and Bergwall to play. And it's difficult. I feel like it will be difficult to actually figure out where Xavi plays if you're going to fit all those players in. And he seems to be pretty intent on playing one of, if not both, Bentancur and Paulinho. Whether that's the right call, that's not up to me. But I don't know, Xavi. I just think he needs to score. It's the classic cliche in football. He needs one off the backside to get his confidence up, and so he can start to cook. Because he has shown a couple moments where he's dropped a shoulder, he's gone past someone, and you're like, okay, now do something, and then he doesn't. So a lot of overhit passes, a lot of poor touches. I just need him to show us a bit more. And I don't think it's that he's being dropped. He's still coming on in those games. He's just not good enough to start yet. And I think that, in my opinion, that's valid, to be honest.
Do you think part of the reason he struggled is because Thomas Frank has rotated the forward line so much, so that maybe some of the players that he has developed seemingly good relationships with, for example, like Wilson Odebear or Cole Moani, he's just not playing with consistently?
He's only really rotated the left of the attack, to be honest, until he actually had to with Kudus getting injured. I do think there is something in that, and I also think there's something in Spence playing left back and not offering anything going forward. because both of them want to cut in. I do think that has played an issue, and I agree with James that playing on the left has been absolutely woeful, and he shouldn't have been playing there in the first place. But then also one criticism I have for Frank is that for some reason there's been a few games this season where he's kind of picked the position that he's not played with, even though it's there in the formation. So, for example, he's played Javi on the left with no 10, but then Xavi's basically played 10, which means that we have no left wing. And the same thing happened against Fulham on the weekend. I think a couple of the journalists asked him in the press conference, like, why do you not think that you overloaded the right and left no players on the left except for Destiny? And he was just kind of like, true.
I also think
that is a criticism.
I also think a big part of the problem with Xavi Simons, though, is the style of play. You know, you look at all the clubs he's been at, PSG, Barcelona, PSV, you know, Leipzig, they all play a ball on the ground. You know, Holland national team, all play a ball on the ground, play a certain brand of football. With ours, a lot of it's long ball. He doesn't suit that style of football. You know, so he's never going to work in this system, in my opinion, because it doesn't suit him. Like, if you're bringing in a player like a Xavi Simons, you know, you're bringing him in to dictate what you're doing going forward. But if we're a lot of the times, if we're playing long ball, then how do you bring him into play to go and affect games and stuff like that? And I think that's a massive part of the problem.
That's a really good point. Just to add on that, I think the best I've seen him play, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, you think he's played better, but I think the best I've seen Xavi play so far is when he came on against Brighton away. And he came on and he really bossed it the second half. He was unlucky not to get a goal. He had a couple of long shots, but he also was passing the ball and spraying it about well with Kudus, and he was linking up really well with him. I think when we were having to chase the game and we were playing it a lot on the ground, like Dave was saying, I think that's when you start to see the best in him. When you start to boot the ball up, he's not going to be holding the ball up, and he's not going to be, you know, like you said, Dave, like being able to do much with long balls. So I think when you use him to his strengths, I think that's when we'd see the best of him. But it's not to take away from the fact that when he has been playing in that style, he hasn't been on his form. So, but then again, I'm not massively worried because, let's be honest, he's not the only number 10 to come from the Bundesliga this summer that's having a nightmare. So I take that with a pinch of salt as well. You know, obviously Wirtz is having an absolute howler as well.
I think Dave's probably right, though. I don't know if it's ever been mentioned by a manager to get it launched to Xavi Simons. You know, it's not really the type of player to be saying that with. Ryan Trestane, we'll get to yours. And then Daniel Field has sent in a super sticker. Really do appreciate you, Daniel. Thank you for the support. Hopefully you have enjoyed the stream and the show. And anybody that wants to get in on this action with the questions after the show, feel free to become a member. And if you are a member, look out for them before the streams over on the channel page. We do try to reserve some time and get back to you guys for all the support that you show us by answering some of your questions that maybe weren't discussed during the show. Ryan Trestane saying, no, we should not care about the style of play at this point in time. We need to be stable this season. We have not had, do not have good enough quality at this moment in time. I'm not interested about that until we have given him the players he wants. So please, can we get behind him and give him 150 or 200 million pounds and get the players he wants? Frank in. Sam, I've argued plenty of times with Ryan. Can you come at it from a different angle, or do you think he's right by saying this? That's not even a question, just a statement, but anything you would say to Ryan here?
I don't think he's 100% wrong. I do think there is some truth in that, but you can't not care about the play style, especially if it's not like yielding results, right? It's not like, you know, when we were playing under Conte and, you know, we were shithousing the worst football you've ever seen, but we were getting wins. Obviously, that's also to do with the fact that we had Harry Kane and Son. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like even if it's not your forethought, it's got to at least be in your mind, like that you can't just play 10 behind the ball and try and hit it on the counter. You know, but I think a lot of fans are struggling with the way that we're playing because we're kind of morphing into like everything they hated about Arsenal. I say they, I'm including myself in that. You know, like when you're saying like when Arteta came second for the first time that year, they played unbelievable football. It pains me to say that, but they really did. And since then, they've played this like, you know, Route One football that's kind of taken over the league because they've been doing so well with it, I guess. But yeah, it's not, I don't know. I don't agree with that style of play, but I do agree that we should be giving him time to get some more players in, basically, because we don't have
The
any
thing is,
attackers.
He did constantly rant about Ange Postecoglou's style of play. So to say that we should not care about style of play is a bit rich, coming
Yeah.
from him, because he did rant constantly about Ange's. So for us to now asking us to not care about it seems only
what I
convenient.
will say though is, like, to be honest with you, I can understand where Ryan's coming from. Like, if Frank wants to play a counter-attacking, fine, but where's the counter-attack? There is none. You know what I mean? And that's where the problem comes in. We're not executing the style of play, which shows to me maybe the squad isn't built to play this way. What we have isn't good enough to play, this sort of way. And at the end of the day, it's cheaper to change the manager than what it is the players. And I think going forward, it'd be wrong to throw the money at this guy and back him with the way we're playing, because this is only going to last so long. And then all of a sudden getting another manager, so I think it's a bit of a dangerous situation. But like, again, I'm not really one of them. I do prefer my football to be played a certain way, obviously, but style of play, I'll get behind it with what our manager brings in. But if you've got no counter attack, then what good is it? It's at the end of the day, we've lost 3 games in 14, and everyone could sit there and say to the fans, "Oh, give Frank time. Stop being mean." It's not me that's going to sack him. It's not you, Jack, not Sam, not James. It's going to be the board. And at the end of the day, all we're saying is if he doesn't win games, been around a long time, they're going to sack him regardless.
Yeah.
They must have in their Outlook calendars in the boardroom, the last week of December, like as a review for Frank, because I mean, look, we're not going to go into January, like Dave said, and buy 100 and something million worth of Thomas Frank players if they're not confident in him. They're going to get rid of him if our results in the next 4 or 5 games are bad, and they're going to get in a new manager who's going to have a mini rebuild in January. I think that's what's going to, that's the more likely outcome at the moment, I think.
The reality is everyone thinks if we give him Semenyo and another striker, things are going to improve. Might improve slightly, but and I know Tyler's going to cane me because he was probably one of the only ones that had a different of opinion on Xavi Simons at the time when we signed him. I was the same. But the reality is we've given him Mawani, we've given him Kudos, we've given him, Xavi Simons, and none of them are in our top 5, in terms of goal scorers. Paulini is, Romero is, Van de Ven is, Richarlison and Johnson, 2 players that people want to get rid of. The reality is, giving him a Semenyo, giving him another striker, it might yield results for the guy that comes in after him. But is it really going to improve what we're doing with Thomas Frank? Personally, I don't think so.
Yeah. I think we'll move on to Artist T's questions here, which tend to be a lot of different info. Some of these might be more so my opinion. I just want your thoughts on it. But yeah, we can't be reactive. We have not learned from PSG. Have we not learned from PSG? We got outclassed and no real threat until Romero's goal. We're lucky Newcastle didn't have their shooting boots on. The stats do not lie. Nothing has changed. Don't you think we pulled the Manchester United? Pressure is building going into the game, and in the end, we get some sort of a result. This is not sustainable. Frank should get 0 credit for the draw because, once again, it was individual brilliance that saved us. With a braver manager and tactics, we could have won that game. They were there for the taking. Why do we do this after every non-loss? Sam, I know you got to go, so would you like to answer your friend Artist T on any of this and then get to your beautiful steak?
Oh, please say you got pepper sauce, please.
Sorry, I was actually just letting you know what kind of steak it was, and I actually missed the question. Which one were you reading?
It was a variety of statements. I think a lot of them, he's just sort of saying, like, Thomas Frank is being saved by individual performances. We're sort of delaying the inevitable in that the style of play isn't good enough. We're sort of being saved by moments here and there. And he's bringing up, if we did have a more attack-minded manager, we could have potentially gotten something from the Newcastle game, from the Manchester United game. Basically, he's saying Thomas Frank is being saved.
Well,
and we're
basically only playing for 45 minutes at the moment. Like, we might as well not even be on the pitch for the first
at a push.
Minutes,
We're playing for about 15.
You're
45
right,
minutes. That's broken up into various spells of 5 or 2.
Yeah, well, most of that time's wasted by Kevin Dancer with his long throws anyway. But no, I do like agree with some of Artist's sentiment. Even if he's trying to, rile the chat up by pulling something out of context earlier on.
At least you let that one go, Sam. At least you let that one go.
Yeah, well, you got to call out bad behavior. You can't reward it. Yeah, Frank definitely. I think like the one thing I really agree with there is like we are a moments team, right? And I think we've been a moments team for quite a long time. But now maybe it's, finally we've lost another, superstar attacker, even if you don't think Son was that guy towards the end. Now we just genuinely don't take any shots. And I think I read somewhere that Frank doesn't like his players taking long shots. And it's like we keep conceding long shots at the moment. And obviously Rishi scored the long shot against Arsenal. And it's just kind of like, clearly we should be taking more long shots, especially if we're struggling to break teams down, then why aren't we telling players to just hit it from the edge of the box? At least you're asking the question. I think that we're just playing with too within ourselves. We're playing too cowardly. I was definitely happy with the way that the defense was looking at the beginning, but I mean, the last few weeks we've been absolutely ravaged by goals recently, and it's just kind of like we're not scoring, or we're not creating a lot of chances. We're conceding quite a lot of goals. I know this sounds like I'm leading on to say Frank out. I'm not, but I am obviously concerned. Like, I'm not just going to sit here and say like everything's roses right now, because it's not. There are a lot of questions that are being asked of Frank, and personally, I don't think he's answering a lot of them well. So look, only time will tell. My goal was to try and give him the season. Obviously, if it gets, in my opinion, so bad that I can't do that, then I'll have to reassess. But as it stands, I think it's difficult, even though he's been in the league, to come into a new team. As Dave said, there are new players there that also need to learn each other. And not to give him excuses, but I think he can come good. I hope he can come good. And I'll leave it with that, a bit of positivity. I think that we'll get the win against Brentford on the weekend, because they've also not had a shot against Arsenal right now. So I feel a little bit better about all that. But yeah, so thank you for the chat. Thank you, lads.
Tell us Artist T what you're having for dinner as you're wrapping up here, because just to make him jealous.
It's just some steak and mash and some assorted vegetables on the side. I think some carrots and
sauce.
Huh?
What sauce? This is the breaker.
I'm not a sauce guy, Dave. I like my steaks bloody.
Oh no!
You don't have any sauce.
Not on a steak. My child.
Are you a caveman?
No.
Well, Dave, you do eat your steaks like a bit of a caveman. You have them well done, which is
but I have sauce on
caveman.
That's crazy as well.
Yeah, you have sauce on it because well done is the worst style of steak you can have, and it's difficult to choose. So you got to spray it with ketchup.
I actually don't know what's worse.
No.
Well done or no sauce. This is shocking.
James just neither answer is acceptable.
Well done is the only way to have it.
But thanks, Sam. Thanks for being on with us, sir. Really do appreciate you. Go and eat your beautiful steak.
Yeah, enjoy.
James, did you have anything to add to this, that Thomas Frank is being saved?
I mean, yeah, Romero saved him last night. Like I said earlier, if we were to have lost that game last night, I genuinely believe we'd be talking about Frank out more. Like, just because we've finally got a point from 1 point from 9 guys, by the way. Or is it 1 point from 12? I mean, listen, Frank is on thin ice already. He's on thin ice already, whether you like that or not. I just want to see going forward something to be able to go, yeah, actually we're seeing some progression, or actually we have an identity. Like, we're talking about style of play. What is our style of play at the moment? Dave, you mentioned counter-attacking. I don't actually know what we're doing. Like, I don't know what the style of play is. And that, for me, is a concern when you have no identity. And as someone else mentioned, like, at the end of the day, our club is to dare is to do. We take risks. We play free-flowing attacking football. At the moment, I'm seeing none of that. 0.5 XG is a good game for us. That's crazy. That is absolutely mental. So for me, he's only getting saved by the odd point here and there, because realistically, I don't think we deserved anything yesterday. I know people were saying about the VAR decision, but I actually think we were the worst team. So there you go.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I do think Thomas Frank was probably saved last night by individual moments from Romero. I don't think Newcastle were that brilliant either, but I will admit, I think they were the better team. Maybe I'm just looking at it from a low standard against Newcastle because we've just been absolutely pummeled by them in the past. And I don't know if we were exactly pummeled last night, but I probably think they did probably deserve the win. If anybody was going to win that game, it was going to be them. And I think we found a way to scrape by. So make of that what you will. Artist T. Dave, where do you see us ending by New Year's?
I don't know. I'll ask RST what the lotto numbers are, to be honest with
Seriously.
you. Look, if I look at the games on the run up to New Year's, let me just have a quick look and I'll give a guesstimation. But what I will say, though, is we might have to start up Dave and Jack food reviews. The steak comments seems to be the most controversial thing said all evening. Everyone's, rattled over the steaks. But no, when you look at our games up to New Year, we've got Brentford twice. We've got Palace, Nottingham Forest, Liverpool. Don't traditionally do well against Liverpool. Nottingham Forest away can be a tricky task. Palace away is tricky. And then Brentford twice. I mean, we bet them even under our worst state. So if we don't beat them, then I don't know, Artist T. To be honest with you, I just want to get back up in the top half of the table. I don't want to have these discussions about, changing a manager and all that again. I really don't. I don't even want to complain about the football. I just want a little period of consistency. I don't think it's too much to ask. New Year's, I'm hoping top half of the table, but equally we could be down scrapping relegation.
Yeah. I don't know if I can predict it, to be honest, but it's not headed in a good direction when you look at our last 5 games. There's no green marks whatsoever, right? When you look at the Premier League table, it's just all grays and reds in terms of points. So I don't know. I think we need to be talking more about the immediacy of things. Thomas Frank needs to win this weekend. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I was about to say, Jack. I would say arguably in our next 6-7 games, the weekend is the most important one out of all of them. Because if you lose against Brentford at home, not only is it going to be so toxic, like he's gone anyway, but it's against his former club. He should know them inside out, really. And the fact that the next games after that, ignoring Slavia Prague for a minute, Nottingham Forest away, they've started to get a bit better under Sean Dyche.
It's not going to be
Liverpool at home, horrendous. I don't want to think about what that score is going to be. And I know Liverpool aren't out the races, but they're a better team than us.
And they
Palace away,
Yeah.
That's not easy either. So, realistically, before 2025 ends, this is the biggest chance of getting 3 points. And if we lose on Saturday, for me, he's as good as gone, I think.
Yeah,
I agree with you, James. I agree with you. Maybe people think we're being harsh, but I'm exactly in your boat there. VAR saved us in the Champions League and the Europa League. It's only for offside. Hoffenheim gets the pen. We don't get the pen against Eintracht Frankfurt. If violent conduct or a bad challenge is missed, like with Javi, I love most of your takes, Dave, but without VAR, he'd be screaming if those decisions didn't go our way. It's almost like he's not a Spurs fan, with these
in the Europa League. Did our player not get decapitated by the goalkeeper to win that penalty? Is that the one he's on about?
I think he's saying that without VAR, we wouldn't have gotten, those decisions, and then maybe there would have been different outcomes. But it was already ridiculous that the referee did have to go to the VAR screen, if you ask me, because he was decapitated, and then they had to convince the referee to go to the VAR screen, and it took like 20 minutes, which was already insane, if you ask me. So I don't really know. I think we'd be screaming at the referees regardless. That would have been one of the biggest controversies ever if the referee didn't give that as a pen. Madison moment.
The fact that RST only picks out 2, but I could pick out 10 on the other end. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, RST. And look, fair is fair, but you can only really pick out 2 that we've benefited from out of about nearly 100 odd games. I mean, I could pick out how many's gone against us. So,
I forget
the weight still is on my side of the point.
I agree, Dave. And I'd also say, James might not remember this one, but Dave and I reference this game a lot. But I remember one of these moments where VAR was available and it was against West Ham. I forget if it was Conte. I think it was Conte. And we had a shot from inside the 6-yard box. And I think the guy was Thilo Kehrer or whatever he was on the line and hit it with his arm, practically touched it like it was a basketball to save it off of the line from going in. Yeah. And they didn't even look at it, on the VAR screen. They might have, but they just waved it off. And I found that to be one of the most insane decisions I've ever seen, where now anytime that a ball is touched by someone's hand, they rule it out or they give it as a penalty in situations like that. And then that situation, they just thought it was deemed, acceptable enough, with the on-field decision. I don't know. There have been so many at Spurs that I've just been incensed by.
And lastly, RST, of course I'd be screaming if they didn't go our way. I'm a Tottenham fan. I want every VAR decision to go our way.
Yeah. Does anyone find it sad how Sarr's been ruined? He's no longer the player he was earlier in the season, and that comes down to the chopping and the changing. Sam, has he been ruined? Or sorry, Sam, James. The ghost of Sam.
I was going to say, you do well to get an answer out of him. No, he hasn't been good. He really hasn't been good. Obviously, he came back after he got injured, didn't he? Before that, he looked like his energetic self. He looked like he was that real box-to-box player. And since he's been back, I feel like, since he's been back from injury, he hasn't looked himself. He hasn't really settled back in. Maybe some of that's to do with the fact that, he was out of the team for a bit, even when he was available, and, he's lacking confidence. And I just think it's a shame that he's struggling, because he is a very good player. He's one of our promising youngsters, isn't he? But I think it's interesting now. We were talking about like integrating Bergvall and Sarr. It's very much turned to almost Bergvall and Gray. But then I think to myself, is that just because we're desperate because nothing isn't really working at the moment? So I don't know. I think Sarr will be back maybe with this with a potential new manager if it happens. But no, hopefully he comes good again.
Okay. And then we'll wrap up with these. And please, everybody, head on over to that link. Show some love to James. We'll give him a plug in just a second. But while you're listening, please head on over to his channel, Spurs Related, and give it a subscribe. He was going to ask Billy a question. Do you think he could sneak some pyro and some flares into the fans for the South Stand? I don't want him to lose a season ticket. And then what are you having for dinner there, James? And give yourself a plug.
I have got to go and put on some rice. I've made a chili con carne tonight, so looking forward to that. Not quite Sam's steak.
Good choice.
Really,
chili's a great choice.
Chili con carne is good though. I do like it, homemade chili. So I've got that. Artist tea, I've got that. And yeah, appreciate the plug, guys. Really enjoyed this show as always. Haven't been here for a couple of weeks, but it's always refreshing to come back, even when Spurs are terrible. It's always a good laugh on here. So yeah, appreciate everyone that goes to the channel, and thanks for having me on again.
Okay, and I think we'll take Jerome's comment, maybe in support about the steak here. He's saying he's also a well done man. Don't worry, Dave. I like my steak well done too. I get a lot of hate for it. I think you guys should, to be honest, get hate for it. As much as they're your taste buds.
Solidarity.
Yeah, you got a brother in arms here, but I think you guys have to stick together because it's an absolutely shocking way to be cooking and having your steak, if you ask me. No point in having steak if it's well done, unless it's, I guess, a burger, maybe. That's the only situation I could think of.
Do you know what the problem is? You guys are so close-minded, you don't even know how good it is to have
I've had it before when I've overcooked a steak. I definitely have had it before, and I've thought about throwing it in the bin.
No, do you know what it is for me? I just don't like the blood in meat. I can't have it. I have to have all my meat well cooked, and stuff like that. And look, that's probably why I'm a big fan of sauces and stuff, because I suppose it helps moisten it up a bit, doesn't it? But Jerome, I'm with you. Well done steak all day long.
I think you're in the minority, Dave. I've got to say,
the game's gone.
For me, the blood. I know, not for everyone, but the blood is where the flavor's at, and you got to have the right sauce as well. A lot of people like peppercorn. I prefer a béarnaise or a garlic butter myself, but I'm gonna have to have steak tomorrow because I've literally, my mouth is watering at the thought of a steak. I actually had to take one back at a restaurant a couple of months ago because I asked for medium rare, which is the only way you should have it in my opinion, and it came well done, and I said, look, I asked for medium rare, I'm not having that. I don't normally take things back, but I just can't eat it well done. I think it tastes like rubber, but that's just my opinion, guys.
Well, the last steakhouse I was in with Nick over there, and the last time I was over there with Nick, I had to send it back because they wouldn't cook it enough. I had to send it back twice. They brought it out again. They're like, you sure? Well done. I'm like, how many times do I have to repeat myself? Is anyone in this restaurant going to give me a well done steak? My peppercorn sauce is going cold. Cook it well done, please.
You don't go to a steak restaurant and have it well done. It's just the game's gone.
Honestly, the waiter stood there for about 10 minutes trying to convince me, and I don't know how many times I had to say the word well done and send it back. Just give it to me. Give me what I'm ordering. I'm paying.
Eamon saying if Frank was a steak, he'd be a cheap, overcooked, dehydrated lump of horse meat. Sounds like Dave should start liking Thomas Frank, by the sounds of it. Sounds like his sort of meal there. That's funny from Eamon. We'll wrap things up here, though, everybody. Really appreciate your guys' support. Thanks for being here with us. Please smash the like button while you're getting on out of here, and we'll see you all tomorrow for another panel show. Thank you to Paul Markey. Thank you to Chris Peters. Thank you to Dermatron, Faz Radfar, Daniel Field, and Jerome for your guys' extra support. Thank you to all the members who sent in their questions for after the show. Thank you to James for sticking on through here, as well as Billy and Sam. Please head on over to James's channel, please, Spurs related, and we'll see you next time. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Well done, steak.